In the jungles of Vietnam, a deadly hunter stalked the enemy, possessing an unmatched ability to blend in with the environment. To many, he was just a nameless ghost, but we know him as Carlos Hathcock. The Vietnam War's top sniper. He had a superhuman ability to concentrate and an unmatched dedication to pursuing his target, spending days motionless without water or food. Carlos Norman Hathcock II was born in Little Rock, in the American Midwest in the state of Arkansas, on May 20, 1942. He was the second child of Carlos Norman Hathcock, who was 22 years old at the time, and serving in the United States Army, and his wife Agnes May Hathcock. Growing up in the post-war environment, Carlos played with his dog in the woods near his home, imagining he was searching for Japanese soldiers with the old Mauser rifle his father had brought back as a souvenir from the war. However, the Hathcock couple began to have constant relationship problems, and his father sank into alcoholism. At that time, Carlos, who was only 8 years old, started smoking, a habit he was never able to quit. That was also when he had another experience, one that would decisively change his path and write his name in history. Little Carlos saw a Marine for the first time in his dress uniform, with gloves and a white cap. The sight of that warrior was fixed in his mind, and from that moment on, Carlos Hathcock had decided that he wanted to be a Marine. In 1952, on his 10th birthday, he received his first gun from his grandmother, a J.C. Higgins .22 caliber single-shot rifle. His eyes sparkled, and from that day on, he started spending a lot of time in the forest teaching himself to shoot accurately and hunting small animals for dinner. 2 years later, in 1954, the disagreements between his parents reached a critical point and the couple separated. He then moved with his mother and brother to Geyer, where they started living with their grandparents. That year, his mother gave him a Winchester .37 12-gauge hunting shotgun as a gift. Besides his passion for hunting, now running in his blood, Carlos remained firm in his goal to join the Marine Corps. And after getting his father's signature on the form, he reported to the recruitment office. On May 20, 1959, the day he turned 17, the minimum age for enlistment at the time, his admission exam recorded that he was 1.75 meters tall and weighed 60 kilos, describing the tall and thin young man that Hathcock was. And soon after, he said goodbye to his mother and was sent off for training in San Diego, California. After completing basic training, Carlos was sent to Hawaii, where he was assigned to the 4th Marine Regiment at Kaneohe Bay. Quickly noticed for his fantastic shooting accuracy, in 1960, Carlos joined the Marine shooting team in Hawaii, winning that year's internal championship, his first trophy. His enviable results were noticed by Major Jim Land, who had just created the first Marine Corps Sniper School, and Hathcock joined its first class in 1961. In November of that year, after completing the course, Carlos was transferred to Cherry Point, North Carolina, and on April 1, 1962, he was promoted to Private First Class, even though he was just a soldier. In August of that year, Hathcock became a shooting instructor at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, which trains Navy and Marine Corps cadets. However, he got involved in a fight in October and was demoted as punishment. On November 10th, Carlos married his girlfriend, Josephine Broughton, who was 12 years older than him. And in January 1963, he was promoted again to Private First Class, advancing to Corporal in May. In November 1964, the couple's only son, Carlos Norman Hathcock III, was born. And the following year, Hathcock won several shooting championships, culminating in winning the prestigious Wimbledon Cup trophy at Camp Perry, Ohio, on August 26, 1965, when Carlos competed in the presence of the Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Wallace Greene. But within months, everything would change in the champion Marine's life. On the other side of the world, a country engulfed in war for decades was once again in a situation of extreme tension. Divided in two, Vietnam had a communist government in the north, supported by China and the Soviet Union, and a capitalist government in the south allied with the United States. After expelling the French at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu in 1954, Vietnam was officially divided into two countries. At the 17th parallel, but both sides continued to pursue reunification, even by force. Therefore, the North Vietnamese army quietly invaded Laotian territory and opened the trail through the jungle. Ho Chi Minh, a secret route to continuously supply the communist guerrillas in the south, known as the Viet Cong. The alarming rise of Viet Cong activities in 1964 and the weak response of the South Vietnamese armed forces to the threat set off alarms in Washington, which saw there a possible repetition of the disastrous Korean situation of 1950. Therefore, after the Gulf of Tonkin incident in August, the American Congress authorized President Lyndon Johnson to send American combat units to Vietnam. On March 8, 1965, 3,500 Marines landed on the beaches of Da Nang, the largest port in the northern region of South Vietnam, beginning the phase of American ground combat power involvement in the war. The Marines established their main base in the Hill 55 area, an elevation located 16 kilometers southwest of Da Nang, and from there they began operations to counter Viet Cong activity in the area. General William Westmoreland's plan, commander of American forces in Vietnam, foresaw that to achieve victory, it would be necessary to quickly send hundreds of thousands of troops to the theater of operations. Carlos Hathcock, who had just been promoted to sergeant, found himself sent there. Arriving in Vietnam, he was assigned to serve in a military police unit, conducting patrols around the base, and office work in a tedious and distressing routine, because Carlos quickly saw how the Marines were being killed in large numbers by the local guerrillas. However, he was rescued from that task by Major Land, who had established a sniper school in Colombia and managed to implement his idea of inserting a sniper section in each combat platoon. In a short time, Sergeant Hathcock found himself assigned to the front line, armed with a Winchester Model 70 sniper rifle, and in the company of a spotter, he began an impressive streak of enemy kills, which soon made his reputation stand out. After a few successful weeks of action, Hathcock felt extremely confident in his talent as a hunter and decided to pin a white feather to his hat. A bold and defiant attitude, that was my trademark. At that time, soldiers wore all kinds of trinkets attached to their uniforms. I chose the feather. Why? Because I wanted to mock the enemies. Snipers aren't supposed to do that, but I was a very belligerent individual, as a sniper. I wanted to show my authority. Carlos was one of 17 shooting instructors at the LAND school, training over 600 snipers from September 1966 to April 1967. During a 90-day period, the 17 instructors eliminated more Viet Cong than entire battalions operating in the same area. Hathcock possessed an unmatched ability to endure physical and mental trials, to stay on the hunt for the target. He made slow movements, similar to those of big cats, tracking his prey for days, advancing only inches at a time. His field experiences led him to compile the 8 commandments of the sniper, which for Hathcock summarized what every successful shooter should do. Keep your body aligned and in a natural position when aiming. Hold the weapon firmly like a handshake. Press the stock firmly against your shoulder. When looking through the scope, clearly distinguish the target. No shadows. Focus on the sight. The target will appear blurry. Press the trigger very gently. Take a normal pause in your breathing. Never give up. Major Land, who closely followed Hathcock's progress in Vietnam, remembered, what made him stand out in Vietnam was not his shooting skill, but the fantastic ability he had to fully blend into the environment while maintaining complete awareness of everything around him. We all have a limit, but Carlos went beyond. He was a hunter. He noticed every breeze, every insect. He definitely had indigenous blood. Land noticed that Hathcock spent long periods on missions, surviving only on peanut butter, crackers, and whatever he could find in nature. He would stay still for days without water or food and being bitten by insects, all to avoid alerting his target. Once he found himself face to face with a venomous snake, but since the Viet Cong were nearby, he couldn't move. He stared into the snake's eyes for hours until it crawled away. The enemy gave him the nickname Long Tran, or White Feather, and put a $30,000 bounty on his head. His ability to blend into the environment stood out and immortalized him for a specific mission: to eliminate a general of the North Vietnamese army. Carlos was inserted by helicopter and carefully approached the officer's command post, clinging to the ground for 4 days and 3 nights, silently passing sentries and an enemy anti-aircraft battery, until he found himself in front of the camp, 650 meters from his target. Incredibly, Carlos had entered the protected perimeter where no American was expected and waited motionless on the ground for the right opportunity. He called these occasions entering his bubble because from then on, he no longer felt hunger or thirst and only had eyes for the target. The early morning or late afternoon are the best times to act. In the morning, after a good night's sleep, they head out cheerful, smoking, laughing, and distracted. In the afternoon, they come back tired, sore, and don't pay attention to anything around them. It was precisely at the beginning of the morning, on the 4th day, that his opportunity appeared. General walked out of his tent, yawned, and stretched in the sunlight. Hathcock lowered his sight to the officer's chest and began to squeeze the trigger, when suddenly the aide-de-camp stepped in front of the man. Carlos kept his finger on the trigger, waiting to see how the event unfolded. And when the aide stepped aside, revealing the general's elegant tunic, the rifle jerked against his shoulder. When Hathcock managed to focus again, the general was lying on the ground, motionless, and the officers around him were running in panic, looking for cover. About an hour later, Hathcock found the helicopter that extracted him from the location. The fame of White Feather as a deadly enemy bothered the Vietnamese command so much that they sent their best sniper to eliminate him, an expert marksman known only as the Shooter. The Cobra had already claimed the lives of several Marines in the Da Nang region, but one day he was extremely bold to get Hathcock's attention. He sneaked up to shooting range of Hill 55 and took out a sergeant inside near the tent where Carlos was sleeping. When he saw his comrade die, he swore he would wipe out the snake no matter the cost. A few days later, he set out on a mission with his spotter, venturing into the jungle, in the area where the snake usually operated. Perched in a tree, Hathcock managed to spot the enemy from a distance, but his position was revealed when he fell from a rotten branch. Eventually, both snipers relocated in the area, practically switching positions in the same spot. But unfortunately for Cobra, the sun was setting right in front of him. The sun shone right on the lens of his scope, and when I saw that glint, I instantly fired right at its center. The shot went straight through the scope. It didn't even touch the sides. He would have killed me. The way it happened, I was just quicker on the trigger. Otherwise, he would have killed me. After eliminating his most cunning opponent, Carlos Hathcock's path would once again be crossed by the enemy. And this time, he wouldn't be moved by honor, but by hatred. A particularly feared guerrilla fighter in that area was simply known as Apache Woman, Kong Satika, who took pleasure in torturing captured Marines with extreme cruelty. In November 1966, she put on a true display of horror by torturing a Marine near Hill 55. For an entire day, Apache tore his skin, pulled out his nails and eyelids, and castrated him before letting him go. The Marine died on the barbed wire fence of the base, leaving Carlos Hathcock furious. Even knowing it was an obvious trap to lure him in, he set out determined to put an end to Apache Woman's career once and for all. He followed her trail and a few days later found her platoon moving through the jungle. Motionless and invisible 600 meters from the guerrillas, he prepared for the shot, which he would later describe as the best of his entire life. We saw them. I saw them coming. There were 5 of them. Suddenly, I saw her crouch down to urinate. Then I was sure it was her. Sensing the danger, her colleagues tried to stop her, but she ignored them. Well, I stopped her. I shot again to be sure. Besides his extreme skill with the Winchester rifle, Hathcock also stood out for using another bizarre weapon, the heavy Browning M2.50 caliber machine gun adapted with a scope. Using the weapon in semi-automatic mode, he adapted a scope, the Nurdle, with 10 times magnification to reach targets impossible for the Winchester rifle. It was with this platform, on top of a hill near the coastal sector of Dukeville. On an afternoon in February 1967, Carlos saw in the distance a boy who looked about 12 years old, riding a bicycle loaded with Avtomat Kalashnikova, 47 rifles. The boy was carrying the weapons brought along the Ho Chi Minh Trail to Viet Cong units in the region, making him an obvious target for elimination. But Carlos was moved by the boy's face, just a child being used by the guerrilla. He then carefully aimed his powerful sniper machine gun at the front wheel of the bicycle, gently squeezed the trigger, and hit its center dead on. The boy fell, and the rifle scattered across the ground. Carlos expected the boy to run away in fear, but the little one had already been trained by the guerrilla. Reacting instantly, he grabbed one of the rifles, loaded a magazine, and opened erratic fire in his direction. That was when Hathcock hit him squarely at 286 meters, a record-breaking shot that remained unbeaten until the year 2002. Carlos Hathcock finished his first combat tour in April of 1967, returning to the United States with 86 confirmed kills and hundreds of other probable ones. To record a kill, the American system required confirmation by 3 people, including an officer. But in Vietnam, that situation was not always possible. In April 1969, he returned to the front lines for a second tour, this time using a Hamilton Model 700 rifle, with which he achieved 7 more confirmed kills by September, raising his total to 93. On the 16th of that month, south of Da Nang, he was aboard a landing vehicle, tracked personnel, 5 amphibious armored personnel carrier, when the vehicle suddenly hit an anti-tank mine, causing a massive explosion. Carlos managed to escape from the burning vehicle, but when he realized that several other comrades were unconscious inside, he went back several times, rescuing a total of 7 Marines. While carrying out the brave rescue, Hathcock suffered multiple severe second and third degree burns, which covered 40% of his body. He had to be thrown into the water by his comrades because he didn't realize how badly he was burned. And that day, his combat career came to an end. Hathcock was evacuated by helicopter to a hospital ship, then to Tokyo, and finally to an Army hospital in San Antonio, Texas, where he stayed for 3 months. After being discharged, he was transferred to the Marine base in Quantico, Virginia, where he helped set up the local sniper school, standing firm as an instructor. In the following years, even though he suffered from intense pain due to his burns, in 1975, his health deteriorated and he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a degenerative disease with no cure. Even with increasing difficulty, Carlos continued in service until 1979 when he retired. As a gunnery sergeant, or gunny, a type of second sergeant, just 55 days before completing 20 years in the force, Major Land made sure that Carlos Hathcock received full benefits in his retirement. Separated from the Marine Corps, he initially found himself in a depressive spiral, but gradually regained balance as he developed a passion for fishing. Hathcock also set up a private sniper training school for military and police forces, and he continued as a figure always present at Marine events, serving as a consultant to the force for many years. In the early 90s, he was already having trouble moving around. On November 12, 1996, assisted by his father and son, who also became a Marine like his father, Carlos Hathcock was awarded the Silver Star for saving Marines from the burning armored vehicle almost 30 years earlier. Extremely debilitated, he passed away at the age of 56 on February 22, 1999. Even during his lifetime, Carlos Hathcock had already achieved legendary status within the Marine Corps, and after his death, the force created the Sergeant Carlos Hathcock Award, which annually honors the Marine who stands out the most in improving marksmanship training. A similar award was created by the National Defense Industrial Association to recognize individuals who have made significant contributions to the improvement of tactics and the use of small arms by United States military and law enforcement forces. And Springfield created a special version of its M25 sniper rifle named White Feather. Hathcock became a standard for modern snipers, and his teachings are now regarded as the highest standard to be achieved by a marksman. Did you like this video? Then send us a tip or support the War Room over on Apoyacy, where you can claim your reward and join the Very Important Person WhatsApp group. I'd like to thank everyone who's helping out, especially these comrades here who are top-notch. And if you want the books I use to make these videos, their links will be right down here. For now, watch these videos I chose for you. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications. When I post more videos, I'll be around. Thank you again for watching, and here's a big hug from the War Room.